Rachel's been on the teaching team for years. She's also on the elder board. And let me tell you, if you've not heard her speak, you're in for a treat because you will find something that can be impactful on your life. Rachel, take it away.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Dan. Yes, I have been a longtime member of Faith Community Church. My family and I have been here for about 16 years now. I know that because we came when my youngest was born. I am on the elder board, and I've been on the teaching team, and I get to teach up here, maybe once, twice, maybe 3 times a year, but I have never spoken as part of the summer movie series. This has been a 4-part series, and today is the final message in the series. We have looked at Welcome to Earth. We have looked at a montage of superhero movies. Last week, we looked at Disney's Encanto, and today we are looking at Lin-Manuel Miranda's musical turned into a movie, In the Heights. And I am so excited that this is my first time to do this series because this is my favorite movie of all time. That is a bold statement, I know. Now, just like Hamilton, which Miranda also wrote, much of the musical is rap music, right? So it was a little bit risky, but I decided to bring my parents to it last summer. And when we came out of the movie theater, I thought, okay, how much did they get of that? And my dad said, I loved it. Couldn't get every word, but I got the message, and he said, it was just like that. Because the movie is based on a community in New York City's neighborhood of Washington Heights. And so when he said, it was just like that, I said, what are you talking about? And he said, I lived in Washington Heights. Now, I knew that he had lived in New York City. I knew that he had lived on Delancey Street. I knew that he had worked in Chinatown, but I did not know that he'd lived in Washington Heights. And he said, it was just like that. He said, every weekend was a party. There was so much music and so much dancing. And he said, and the community would rally around people that showed promise and collectively help push them up and out. And when they succeeded, they would come back and they would reach down to help pull the next person out. And I was so excited that his description of the community matched the movie's description of the community so well that it made it even more one of my favorite movies. But I have to tell you that yesterday, one of my sons kind of burst my bubble a little bit when he said, Mom, no offense, but I'm not sure you're the right person to be speaking on this movie. And I said, wait, I love this movie. What are you talking about? And he goes, you're kind of a white suburban mom. What are you going to say? And I said, oh, buddy, this movie is so rich, and the stories are so rich. They speak for themselves. There's so much power. And I said, just give me a chance. And he said, all I'm saying is that a month ago, you flipped out when you found gummy worms in your Dairy Queen Frosty. That's all I'm saying. He's like, it's all about perspective. I was like, okay. But I just wasn't expecting them. So yeah, that is his perspective. And I said, just give me a chance. Give the movie a chance. So on that note, would you pray with me? Lord, there are things in life that just cross boundaries. They cross cultural boundaries. They cross all boundaries, Lord. Hope, hopelessness, joy, frustration, dreams, Lord, and wanting to be on the path that you have set for us, Lord. So we just ask you to meet each one of us today where we are on this journey of life and give each one of us a nugget. Challenge us where we need to be challenged and encourage us where we need encouragement, Lord. And we just lift this morning up to you. We pray in your name, Lord. Amen. So before we jump into the movie, I want to just quickly share the main verse that today's message is based on. We'll be coming back to it later, but I want to touch on it now. It's Proverbs 3, 5, and 6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to him, and he will make your paths straight. I want to touch on this first because this is a great verse, right? But it's also a hard verse. Because it's when we're in the hard times of life, it's when we're in the hard places that sometimes we can be like this is good stuff. And I wish I could do it, but right now, I'm not feeling it. But while the book of Proverbs has lots of little teachings like this, it's in the book of the Psalms where we find the ups and downs of real life. And when we can connect the two, the teachings in Proverbs and the real life we find in Psalms, we find a lot of hope. The key is to connect the two. And I think today's movie, In the Heights, helps us to do that. So let's jump in. To give you some context, we're going to start off with the main character. His name is Usnavi. A little bit of a strange name. You have to watch the movie to find out how he got it. I'm not going to tell you. He lost both of his parents. He doesn't have his parents around anymore. He is making a living by running a little bodega on a corner of 2 streets in Washington Heights. I'm going to show you 3 clips in rapid succession. They're going to run right into each other because I want you to kind of see what his life is like and what he's hoping for. Did you hear any of those phrases? A few that stuck out to me were, those were the best days of my life. Have you ever said something like that? Or how about, you're stuck to this corner like a street light. Have you ever felt stuck like that? Or how about, on these blocks, you can't go 2 steps without running into somebody's big plans. And the implied message in that is, and those plans hardly ever come to anything. Usnavi is stuck. He's struggling with where he is. He dreams of going back to a life he once knew. And he doesn't actually have the means, really, to move forward with that dream. His father's place that he wants to go back to is devastated. Have you ever felt like that? You can't go back. You can't go back to the life you once had. But you can't move forward either because you've got big dreams, but they're just not materializing. You're stuck. What does it feel like to be stuck? David, a beloved king of Israel and a prolific writer of the Psalms, knew what it felt like to be stuck. He writes, "Save me, O God, for the waters have come up to my neck. I sink in the miry depths where there is no foothold. I have come into deep waters. The floods engulf me. I am worn out calling for help. My throat is parched. My eyes fail looking for my God." Have you ever been in a place like that? That makes me think of sinking into quicksand. Now, I'm a 70s and 80s kid, and I don't know if you remember the movies and TV shows from the 70s. Everybody seemed to be, it was like death by quicksand. I used to go to bed at night fearing that somehow I was going to unwittingly step into quicksand, and that was going to be the end of me. Sinking into quicksand, what a hopeless, suffocating, claustrophobic feeling. And there it is. David says, "I am worn out calling for help. My eyes fail looking for God. I'm stuck, God. Where are you?" The thing about feeling stuck is that it's a very hopeless, powerless feeling. What is it like to feel powerless? Well, numerous characters in the Heights could tell you. You see, Benny on the right here, he is a young man. He's got so much business acumen, and he wants to make his mark in the business world, but he has no means to send himself to business school. And Vanessa over there on the left, she's working a day job that she doesn't want to be working. She dreams of owning her own business, and one day she's saving all her pennies, and she runs downtown to put a deposit on a studio, first in last month's rent and security deposit, and the realtor says to her, "You need a co-signer who can prove that they have an income 40 times the rent." And just like that, her dream dies. And then you have Nina, the one with the wavy hair. Nina is going to Stanford. She's made it to Stanford. And she's got the chops to make it at Stanford. But she gets to Stanford and she discovers she has no community. Because she doesn't have the wealth and the means that her fellow students have. She doesn't look like her fellow students. In fact, she gets invited to a dinner by the dean, and somebody hands her a plate thinking she's part of the wait staff. She's lost her community, and she's flailing. She's feeling insecure, and she just lets go of her dream. I'm dropping out of Stanford. There's a song in the movie that brings all of the powerlessness, all the hopelessness, all the insecurity together. It's called Blackout. New York City is under siege with a heat wave. And that heat wave overwhelms the power grid, and they have a multi-day blackout, and they come together and they sing a song about what it means to not have power. They literally have no power. But they also have no power. They have no means. They have all these dreams, and they can't make them happen. And it's a really amazing song. So how do we respond when we feel powerless? We might feel hopeless. You can see the moment in Nina's eyes that her dream dies. When that realtor tells her what she needs in order to get that studio, you can see her eyes just die. You might feel insecure. Nina is battling feelings of insecurity. She does not fit in Stanford. She doesn't have the wealth of her peers. She doesn't look like her peers. In fact, she looks like the wait staff. And her issue there is she feels like she's betraying the wait staff because she's trying to get a leg up on life. So she doesn't fit in with her peers, and she doesn't fit in with the servers. She's just a mess. And it feeds her insecurity, and her insecurity leads to her crushing her dreams. And then we might get angry because while Nina is trying to drop out of Stanford, her dad is doing everything in his power to keep her there. He is selling off his business to raise the funds to pay for the tuition. And he gets angry because he can't control her. And he's doing everything he can, but she says, I refuse. And all of a sudden, you see him well up in anger. They're at a dinner party, and he slams on the table, and everybody scurries. How do you react when you are feeling stuck? When you're feeling powerless? Does it bring up feelings of hopelessness or insecurity in you or anger in you? There was a time it brought out anger in me. And I'm about to tell a story that I got permission from Mike to tell because it's not a flattering story. I was a freshman in college, and I was a computer science major. So I had to take calculus, but like the hard calculus. Like there were multiple tracks, and I had to take that one. And I studied, and I studied, and I'd studied, and I'd go into the test, and I'd be like, it's not even in English. I have no idea what they're trying to ask. And like one of the classic questions, some of you engineers might know. So one hose can fill a pool in 50 minutes, but the pool is leaking and will leak completely in 300 minutes. So if we are filling the pool with this hose while the pool is leaking, how long will it take to fill the pool? And my fellow students would get to work answering the question, and I would be like, how about fixing the pool? I don't get it, right? So needless to say, I was not at the top of the curve. I couldn't even see the top of the curve from where I was sitting. But I was working really hard, and I would do the homework problems. So I was like, why can I do all the homework, but I can't ace the test? So I got really hopeless. What's the point? I'm not even going to study. What's the point? But then I started getting frustrated, and frustration goes to anger. And anger needs an object. So some of us get angry at God when things aren't going right, and some of us get angry at people when things aren't going right. So I chose people. Because here's the thing, and I'm going to tell you this. I was 19, cut me some slack. I am not 19 anymore. I also need you to know that my father is from Shanghai, my aunts are from Hong Kong, and I still have relatives in China. I need you to know that. Because the night before one of my tests, I was so frustrated, and I was so angry. A friend of mine walked in, and she was like, how are you doing? I was like, oh, let me tell you. I said, I don't understand why they keep letting all these Asian students into the school. I said, they are screwing up the curve in my calculus class. Because they're at the top of it. And I said, I wish we could just send them all home. Does that sound familiar? You ever heard anybody say something like that? Those words came out of this mouth. And my friend, she was stunned, and she goes, she let me have it. She said, Rachel, if every Asian student in your calculus class went back to Asia tomorrow, they'd all be in Asia, and you would still suck at calculus. She said, they are not the reason that you're struggling. Now, have you ever had somebody speak truth into your mess, and you know that they're right? I was so, if I thought I was angry before she challenged me, I flashed so hot, I didn't even see red, I saw white. But as quickly as it flashed, that flash dissipated because I knew in my heart that she was right. That my anger against people who are in a group of people that my own family is a part of, how ridiculous is that, was coming out of my own struggle and my own insecurity, and they had nothing to do with it. And I realized, I'm on the wrong path. I am on the wrong path. I need to change my major. If they had gone to Asia and I had sprung to the top of the curve, you would not want me writing the software that flies an airplane. I'm just saying. So I changed my path. See, God had given me many gifts and certain gifts, and calculus wasn't one of them. So King David had similar moments, and we find them in the Psalms. Once again, he shows us how real he can be and how real we can be with God. He's got an enemy, and we can't even go into like who the enemy is. That's another story and another sermon, but he's got an enemy. Things aren't going well, and he's angry, and he's frustrated, and you can see it just pouring out of him. It's not pretty. He's praying to God, may his children be fatherless and his wife a widow. That's nice. May his children be wandering beggars. May they be driven from their ruined homes. May a creditor seize all he has. May strangers plunder the fruits of his labor. May no one extend kindness to him or take pity on his fatherless children. May his descendants be cut off. May their names be blotted out from the next generation. May the iniquity of his fathers be remembered before the Lord. May the sin of his mothers never be blotted out. He is on a tear. David is on a tear. If you start at the beginning of that psalm, you see that he thinks he's doing everything right. I'm working so hard. I'm doing everything right. Why is this guy prospering? But he takes his anger out not just at his enemy, but at his children, at his wife, at his parents. Like, what comes out of us when things are not going our way? So I'm just going to ask you, have you been lashing out at anybody? Is there something inside that maybe you need to deal with, a struggle? Are you on the wrong path? Because it's against this backdrop of emotion, feeling stuck, powerless, and angry, that we come back to Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, which we believe was written by David's son Solomon. And here's the interesting thing. We're reading these Psalms about David feeling stuck and suffocated and powerless and angry and lashing out. But there was something about his faith that still allowed him to pass down a legacy to his son who could write something like this. What does it mean to trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding? So I have found in my own life, I have had to exercise this muscle by starting off small. For asking God for help in the little things and actively looking for his provision and acknowledging them when I see them. See, I started out calling them God winks. I mean, everybody said, oh, there's a God wink. But I don't call them God winks anymore. I call them breadcrumbs. Because I need to know when he throws out a little breadcrumb, I'm asking him, throw me a breadcrumb that shows me that I'm on the right path. If I can see that breadcrumb, I'm going to keep walking this path. What does it mean to submit all our ways to him? What I found is the more breadcrumbs he leaves for me, the easier it is for me to submit to him in the next thing. See, I'm going through a process right now where I really want to control it, and there's a lot of control levers that I could pull. I could be like, I can control that, and I can control that, and I can control that, and I'm feeling pretty good. And all of a sudden, about midway through this process, God took all the control levers away. Like, I can actually still see them, and I can actually see them so I can reach out to them. And he's like, no, see how long your arms are? It's like right here. You can't pull it. You can see the control lever, but I'm not going to let you pull it. Now, an earlier version of me would be flipping out over that lack of control right now, about the feeling of powerlessness. And I'm not saying I don't have my days. I have some friends out there, you get those phone calls when I'm having one of those days. But what I'm learning is the more breadcrumbs he leaves for me and says, you're on the right path, the easier it is for me to accept that I can't pull my control levers. So I'm actually kind of converting over to, Lord, this is interesting. You literally took away all my control. I'm kind of excited to see what you're going to do. It's scary, but it's also kind of fun. But what does it mean for him to make all our paths straight? Now, a few years ago, our family visited Yellowstone. And at the end of our trip, we just wanted to go back to the airport in Billings, Montana. And so we looked at the map and said, oh, that's the fastest way. Let's go out through the north entrance. We'll go up over this Beartooth Pass. Has anybody here ever driven the Beartooth Pass? Okay. So I've driven a lot of mountain passes in my life. I have never been as scared as I was on that Beartooth Pass. I mean, Paul is a pretty calm guy. He was also like, yeah, this isn't fun. Now, this picture doesn't even do it justice because it only shows a hairpin turn. I spent lots of time I was like, no, I need the hairpin turn with the sheer cliff because there were many of those. Now, imagine driving that road with a sheer cliff. Now, imagine we were lucky that we just happened to decide to go during the day because if we had driven that road at night, I would have been catatonic. Now, when I think about fighting against God's will for my life, about refusing to submit to him, I think about the Beartooth Pass. It's a hard, scary road. And driving in the dark would be even scarier. But as we learn to trust in him and submit to him, the road straightens out considerably. It might still have some twists and turns in it, but it will look a lot more like, say, I-10 going from LA to Florida than the Beartooth Pass. Now, I wasn't sure I was going to make it off of the Beartooth Pass, but the few times I've driven I-10, I kind of felt like I'm most likely going to get to my destination. And that, for me, is the difference between living my life according to Proverbs 3, 5, and 6, and living my life on my own. Now, that's all well and good, and it seems to suggest that the straight path is always going to be the easy path. But that's not true. We know that. Sometimes the straight path is a bumpy path. Sometimes the straight path is a steep path. Sometimes the straight path is a really long path. Sometimes God puts us on a really long path. And when we're in that long path, it's really easy to feel forgotten. So some of us feel stuck, and some of us feel powerless. Some of us just feel forgotten. David understood that too. How long, Lord, will you forget me forever? How long will you hide your face from me? How long must I wrestle with my thoughts and day after day have sorrow in my heart? How long will my enemy triumph over me? Have you ever prayed prayers like that? How many of you have been praying for something for days, for weeks, for months, for years, and you're wondering, how long, Lord, have you forgotten me? That brings us to Claudia's story. Claudia in the Heights is, let me see if I have, sorry. I was just checking to see what I had there, and it was right. Turns out it was right. Claudia is the neighborhood grandmother. Her apartment is a haven. Usnavi lives with her, and the other youth on the block, she's their grandmother. They're in and out of her apartment all the time. She is central to their lives. But it is not until the second half of the movie that we get to see a snippet into really the hardships that she's endured. It's a long song. I've only picked a clip out of it. It just gives us a peek into her life. Claudia has lived a long life of hardship. And she spent a lot of her life, maybe her whole life, feeling unseen and forgotten. She says that. She says that at one point, talking about how invisible she felt in her life. And those are themes that run through David's Psalms. But here's the thing about Claudia. Her whole mantra from the very beginning, you hear it at the beginning of the film, and you hear it with her last words, spoiler alert, we lose Claudia in this moment. Her first and last words practically in the movie, paciencia y fe, patience and faith. She has lived her life on a long road of patience and faith, and she has left a legacy, because when she passes, the whole community comes out. The youth are gutted. Look what David says. I'm not going to read the first passage because we read that at the beginning, the one about feeling stuck and suffocated. But listen to this next one. It's like a mirror image, but flipped. I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit. He turned to me. He saw me. He lifted me out of the slimy pit. He set my feet on a rock. He put me on a new path. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see and fear the Lord and put their trust in him. Patience and faith. Claudia's patience and faith were the core to her legacy. She may have felt unseen and invisible in that great city, but she left a legacy. In this moment, she is talking to insecure Nina, and she is talking to her about feeling invisible, and she teaches her to start asserting her dignity in small ways. And a few scenes later, we see a light bulb go off in Nina. Wait a minute. I can go back to Stanford. Because, wait a minute, she's figured out how she is going to use that education to come back and pull the next one up. And the minute she finds meaning on her path, her hard path, she can't wait to get back to it. Claudia is leaving a legacy, and guess what? Nina's going to leave a legacy of her own. Her life mattered. You are not forgotten. You are not unseen. You matter. Now, I don't want to give out any other spoilers, but suffice it to say that every single one of these characters finds his or her own way. They discover their path. They get unstuck. And they get there by discovering their deep love for and the great power in their community. And that's a lesson for us. You see, it should be the same way for us. We should be encouraging each other in Proverbs 3, 5, and 6 because we are a community. Each one of us goes through life's high and lows. We feel stuck at times. We feel powerless at times. We feel angry at times. That's why we need each other. The strength, beauty, and joy of the In the Heights community was in its community, and the strength, beauty, of joy of our faith community is in our community. Our fellowship with God and our fellowship with each other, encouraging each other to trust in the Lord, to submit our ways to him with patience and in faith. Will you pray with me? Lord, there are so many stories in that film that mirror what I'm guessing are so many stories in this room, Father. The wishing we could go back to places in life that we cannot go back to, hopes and dreams for the future, feeling stuck, feeling powerless sometimes, and sometimes feeling insecure and angry, Lord. But your word shows us that you always see us, that you want to leave a legacy of faith in our lives that reaches down and invests in the next generation, Father, to fill our lives with meaning, whichever path we're on, Lord. We just pray that you would help us to get on the path that you have for each one of us, Lord. Show us where you want to straighten our paths. Show us where you want us to do the hard work in ourselves, Lord, so that you can help put us on the right path. We love you, Lord, and we pray this in your name. Amen.
Amen.